What's up guys, welcome back. New video, new car, new cam kit. Lovely VY Maloo, bone stock. We've done our pre-runs. We actually found that we already have a fuel pressure issue, a fuel feed issue in the pre-runs, but it's not till right at the very end of the run. It did make about 320 horsepower at the wheels. It is a manual, LS1 241 heads, just a good old HSV VY Maloo. So it's getting the full berries, OTR, CNC heads, cam kit. We're putting the 1212 in, which as you know has become one of our favorite cams, our go-to cam for Cathedral Port heads. And you know, with an OTR, good exhaust, this cam, all the rest of our upgrades, these things do go really well. We're also putting the new clutch in this thing. We've got a heavy duty NPC clutch to go in when the motor goes back in. So all happy days, let's get it done, son. Being that this one is manual and we're finally getting to do some 241 CNC'd with the 1212 in a manual car, really interested to see what sort of power this actually puts out. Not only that, but we may actually finally be able to test and show the difference between this cam, the CNC heads and stuff. We have found that they do start to create a little bit of pressure. They don't stay at atmospheric through the whole run, which means that the throttle body is starting to become a restriction. And we've been wanting to test that ever since we did the WK Statesman. But every car that we've done this cam and stuff in since then, either didn't have the good heads on it or didn't have a good enough exhaust. It wasn't actually getting to that point where it was drawing vacuum and it wasn't the restriction. So we do have another throttle body in the back room. So if we do find on the dyno that this thing does provide some sort of restriction and it's not quite getting to 100 kPa, we'll change that over and we'll see how much is to be gained by just going to a 92mm throttle body in this instance. So looking forward to that. Should be a good little setup. Righto guys, getting sorted. Engine's out, we're all cleaned up, we're getting pretty well ready to put it back together. So pulled down to a short and rotating assembly, yeah, cleaned up, deck surfaces, everything else, we're all ready to go. The heads are already set up, Bo's already set up the heads, so when we do CNC heads like this, we ideally, in this, like this instance, like to do them exchange, so we'll send a set of our heads off to actually get CNC'd, that way we can set them up, do all the installed heights and have them basically completely assembled, ready to go before the car even gets here. That way it's just a matter of pulling the heads off, putting our cam in, degreeing it in, new lifters, everything else that we go on with the kit, put our CNC heads on, get it back in the car. That way we can do it within a week. Whereas obviously if we have to send the heads off the engine away to get CNC'd, all of a sudden you got like 3-4 weeks of downtime. So this is just a much more efficient way of doing it, which we try and do. However, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes we won't always have the exact head casting that the car has on it already. We don't like to change them, or a lot of people don't like to change them, specifically when they've got HSVs and you might have 6 litres with 243s and things like that. So it doesn't always work out that way, but yeah, it's really nice when it does, which this one is. So it should only be basically a 3 or 4 day exercise to get this sorted. All right guys, after a few dramas of getting argon bottle sorters and stuff, getting some contaminated gas. Yeah.
I think it's a welder.
You reckon it's our welder?
Yep, because it was fucked today, even with that gas.
Even with the new.
Change over to the other TIG, it's perfectly fine.
Well, there you go. Our welder just completely shit in the bed. Anyway, a few dramas is the main thing, but Rex persisted and managed to get this exhaust sorted for this Maloo to keep it twin exit, and it's come together quite well, considering. So just chopped it behind the mufflers. The owner didn't want to put any extra resonators in at the moment. It is just a weekender, so he does want it pretty loud and angry, which by all accounts, the way this has ended up with this 1212 cam and these heads and stuff, it will be quite angry from what we know from the WK. So super excited to see what sort of power this thing puts down, being a manual and all the right gear. But yeah, so split them there and just followed the stock route to bring them out the back. And those are the tailpipes. So now we do have some tips that are on the way, which happily, you know, fit the cutouts in the bar really nicely. So we'll weld them on when they get here, but yeah, came together quite nice. Righto, boys and girls, we're just about to start up. Rex reckons he may have figured out the fuel pressure issue as well already, which is nice. So hopefully that's sorted before it even goes back on the dyno. But we'll go through that in a minute after we get first start. First hit of the key, mate. First hit of the key. This cam sounds angry. Very angry sounding cam. First turn off of the exhaust. Good. Looking and sounding mint. All right, first startup went mint. So I'll just quickly fill you on a few things because obviously I didn't film this one too tightly because we've done a million of them. So there is just got to get to a point where we're at now where it's just cycling the same content. It's not about that. It's more about the results of what's going to happen. So anyway, one of our complete series level 2 cam kits with the 1212 Crow cam, which as you guys know, we've been using heaps with Cathedral Port setups and it's been awesome. It's been really, really good. We used this cam in our personal WK Statesman when we cammed it with the exact same exhaust, except it was standard port 799 heads, which are about the same. They're pretty much the same head as a 243, which is the LS2 head. But otherwise the exact same setup through auto, and it made 404 wheel horsepower with a standard port head, which was really, really big through an auto with a converter. It was awesome, made wicked power. Big deal to make over 400 treads through an auto with a standard port head. So we've got the exact same exhaust on this. It's a Black Ops 4-into-1 with twin 3-inch. Obviously, as I talked about though, being that only the VZ HSVs came with the dual exit, most of them were single side, we did have to modify the back of the exhaust. So sounds awesome, sounds wicked. But these long tube headers, they seem to respond really, really well. And instead of 799s, we've got CNC ported 243s from Next Gen Engineering or Tremaniac. And as well as that, we've got our VCM OTR upgrade and a new MPC heavy duty organic plate, single plate clutch, which we find to be plenty sufficient for these aspirated setups. And they're still really nice and light and easy and streetable. So it's like almost like driving a stock one as far as how streetable that clutch is. And they hold up to a lot of abuse. So that's the combo. Now, what we found with the Statesman, which we always wanted to get to, but we never actually got time to get it back on the dyno and sort out, was that we found that the Statesman with this setup, with this cam, this exhaust, and the 799 heads, same OTR, same intake manifold, we did find that it wasn't quite getting to 100 kPa or 0. There was a little bit of vacuum in the intake manifold at wide open throttle. And the idea was always to get to it with a 92mm throttle body to actually see how much restriction the standard throttle body is. Now we've done a few 12-12 combos since then, but they've all been slightly different exhausts, and for whatever reason and whatever other variations were present in each of those cars, we never got to that same point where we were seeing that little bit of vacuum in the manifold at wide open throttle, so it was obvious that the throttle body wasn't being a restriction. So we are hoping that this one, being that it's so close to what the Statesman was, and being manual, we're hoping to see some really good power numbers out of this, and we're hoping to see maybe that little bit of vacuum at wide open throttle in the top end, which means we can finally test this setup with a 92mm throttle body and see how much difference that makes. Because, you know, if the Statesman made 404 through an auto with a standard throttle body, you know, hopefully this thing closer to 420, 425 as it sits, and maybe with a bigger throttle body, who knows? So exciting stuff, keen to see it, but we will see, because the 799s are a slightly higher compression than the 241. So we'll just see whether the extra compression is worth that power or the CNC port is worth a bit extra power. We'll find out. Now, as far as the fuel pressure issue goes, Rex found that when he started investigating, that the platform that goes over the top of the tank in the tray was backwards. Someone had put it back to front, and someone had replaced this fuel pump moderately recently, which is why the owner left the tub liner out of the ute, because he knows that it's really hard to get in and out of. So we can't thank him enough for that, because that saves us a heap of time and trouble. But when they put that cover on back to front, it's got lipped edges, and one of the edges was actually sort of crushing and slightly restricting the purge valve. So it was very likely just producing or creating a fair bit of vacuum in the tank if it couldn't breathe properly through the purge. Not only that, but Rex found that the wiring for the fuel pump that they replaced wasn't super great, so Rex replaced a little bit of the loom there with some better wiring. So hopefully between those two things, our fuel issue is sorted before it even goes back on the dyno. And yeah, happy days. Let's get this on the dyno and see what it does. All right, and that's what our custom rear end of the exhaust looks like on the car. Yeah, as you can probably see it here from that startup, she's pretty rowdy, which we knew it was gonna be. This cam is rowdy, and without rear mufflers, she's yeah, pretty rowdy. But like I said, it's what he wanted. It's not ridiculous, but Yeah, sounds angry. Really like it. We really like this cam. It's a really, really nice cam. Righto guys, so big girl back on the dyno. Unfortunately, still having fuel pressure dramas. So Rex has pulled this apart, and we were told that it was a 255 that was installed, but that is just like a no brand. Probably came from eBay for all we know. Probably not helping the situation. And then that is just full of gunk, which would also not be helping the situation. So yeah, two options is either get an actual 255 from TI and replace the pump, or we could just buy, you know, we don't have any issues with these things normally with the fuel system, just the standard one. So the other option is just to buy another factory module and just drop it straight in. So
I reckon we just put a 255 in it. That's what's really good about the actual genuine 255 is it's the same plug.
Yep.
So it's about as close to drop in as you get. You'll still have to cut that line out, but we just get our plastic replacement from Raceworks, and that'll pretty much drop in like that strainer and everything just bolts straight on, and they're only, it's just like a couple of mil taller, but that's pretty easy to sort out. So
anyway, we'll get this sorted and then we'll get back into it. The other thing is, if this thing makes the power we expect it to make, we will be pretty much out of injector, is the other thing. Because we have done the most power I think we've made out of one of these before was 425, which was using some very special heads that we used to get done by our head porter, Pete, that we used to work with quite a bit, but unfortunately we can't get that program anymore. But baby cam and those heads on in a VZ 1 tonner went 424 or something, and I think we were pretty well out of injector by that point. So yeah, that'll be what it'll be. I don't think the customer really wants to spend money on injectors, but anyway, we'll see how we go. But we'll get this fuel system sorted and then we'll get back into it. All right guys, parts have been ordered, but for now we need to get some other stuff done. So off the dyno she comes, over in the corner until we get our parts. Righto guys, back on the dyno. We've got our new fuel pump in there, so hopefully that is the end of our fuel pressure issues. We also got our exhaust tips, which Rex just set up now. I'll show you what they look like, but they look bloody awesome. They just fill the holes in the rear bar perfectly. So you know, the way the holes are shaped in the rear bar, quad tips would have just looked funny. There was nothing else that was really going to look right except for a couple of big singles, and they look awesome. They turned out great, so awesome stuff. Let's see what this thing does. Righto guys, so 414 at the wheels, which is already an awesome result. Really happy with that result as it is, but again, perfect opportunity to see whether a throttle body really has much benefit. So we're fitting this one, nothing special, just one of those eBay 92mm throttle bodies with an adapter to go to 3-bolt. Now the actual hole in the adapter plate, which is the same size as the hole in the front of the intake, is actually quite small. So, you know, realistically, it's the choke point. So I don't know if we're really gonna see a huge difference in going to this because I feel like that's the restriction. But Rex was saying at full tilt, it is dropping about 2 kPa, so we'll give it a go. It's worth trying. There's no advantage. We'll pull it back off, put the stock one back on. No harm, no foul, but it'd be good to know. Have that in the little data bank. Now, obviously, if you are able to get a... Yep, that's full throttle. So now, obviously, if you're able to get a LS2 cathedral port intake with a 4-bolt, and that way you could just put one of these throttle bodies straight on without having the adapter plate, and obviously that hole in the 4-bolt is quite a bit bigger, so obviously then you're probably going to see a much bigger advantage, but we'll just see how this goes. It's one way to find out, and that's to do exactly what we're doing. We've got it together enough to do a run up. It's obviously not going to want to idle because of the change in size and the ISE, and there's a few differences that we're not going to bother going too far trying to sort out until we've run it up and just made sure it's actually going to make a difference, because it's not going to make a difference, then it's all a waste of time. So we'll just run it up and see. Rightio guys, results are in. Consistently 416, 416, so I've picked up 2-3 horsepower. It isn't dropping that last 2 kPa, it is maintaining, but obviously the restriction more so is in the actual size of the manifold and the throttle, the hole in the manifold. So, you know, we're only getting 95 kPa, there's still about 5 kPa to be had. So like I said, if you got LS2 manifold with the 92mm throttle body directly on it without that little restriction in the LS1/LS6 style intake manifold, well then you probably would get a little bit further and it probably would be worth doing, but obviously at this stage not worth it. So there you go, for all the people that jump up and down whinge about how they need bigger throttle body on an LS1, as long as you're running the LS1 LS6 intake manifold, even at this level, 400 plus wheel horsepower, which as much as people like to talk about, realistically for a stock bottom LS1 is pretty rare. It's pretty rare to be making over 400 wheel horsepower on a stock bottom LS1 aspirated. So, you know, it's save your money, don't buy a throttle body. It's not really needed. But anyway, we do have an LS2 manifold, but it's a lot of work for just the sake of a test. I'm not really keen on bothering to do that. We're too busy. Can't really afford to spend the time unpaid. But at least we know now the deal with the throttle body situation on these intakes and these manifolds. So for that sake of 3 horsepower, it's probably not worth bothering. Gonna put the old one back on and set it back up exactly how it was. So as I'm pretty sure I already talked about earlier in this video, at that power, we are at 92% injector duty cycle, so we're just about out of injector. So like we talked about, probably get to about that 420 wheel horsepower, and that's where you pretty much start to run out of standard LS1 injector. But anyway, nonetheless, it will be fine at 92% injector duty. It'll be happy. So we'll put the old throttle body back on it, and that's it for this thing. We will spend just a bit more time bleeding up the new clutch, get a bit more fluid into it and bleed it up again. But apart from that, that's the Maloo all finished and sorted out. We'll slot that throttle body back over and it can go home. So thanks for watching, everyone, as always. Glad that our fuel pump solved our fuel pressure issues and they are no more. And this thing will be doing plenty of skids. Old mate should be stoked with it. So thanks for watching, as always. Smash like, smash subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. Peace out. See you. Bye.